Hello and welcome to Experience is Everything with me, Jenny Murray, brought to you by Saga. On this podcast, I'll be talking to people who'll be looking back on experiences they've had throughout their lives and explaining what impact they've had as they've got older. On today's episode, I'm delighted to be joined by a man who is one of the most recognisable faces and voices on television. He's best known for presenting ITN's News at 10. He's interviewed some of the biggest names in recent history. Nelson Mandela, Saddam Hussein, Tony Blair, President Bill Clinton, President George Bush Jr., Colonel Gaddafi. He was knighted in 1999 for his services to journalism. He's been named Newscaster of the Year 3 times, as well as receiving honorary degrees from more than 8 universities. So Trevor Mcdonald, welcome to the podcast.
Jenny, thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here.
So, Trevor, what was life like for a little boy growing up in Trinidad?
We thought it was quite a nice life, but that was a child's perception because, quite frankly, it was a small village. We all knew each other, but we had no money. It was very poor, but very friendly. People were very friendly and very supportive of each other. There was something which I suppose today you would call a real community spirit among the people who lived there, because we had to depend on each other. I think the other thing I remember about it was that if you live in a very small environment, small village, you tend to be more extrovert in the way you see the world. You know your little bit of it is very small, and so you look outwards. So, I was interested in people who, traveled the world and went to big international conferences and met prime ministers and, foreign secretaries and so on. And you almost came to that position because you were in a small, environment. Trinidad, when I left, had a population, I think, probably less than 1 million. And that's pretty small in international standards.
What about your education? How important was that? And learning to speak well?
It was absolutely important. I remember my mother, if ever we slipped into West Indian slang, which we should really, because we were West Indian, my mother would say, "And what does that mean? We were made to speak the king's or queen's English." What was strange for me about that is that my parents were never very formally educated, but they had this vision of what their kids needed to do. One of them was to try and speak well, and she did not tolerate anything else.
So what was expected of you as you grew up? What did your parents think you might become?
It was very aspirational. In my time, you were supposed to be a doctor or a lawyer. And this was not just a passing fancy. We'll travel along the road and my father would say to me, "Oh, that's Mr. James. His son is at Oxford." I didn't even know what that meant or what that was. But I remember rather jokingly, my father never approved of comics, but he did occasionally work for a Scottish doctor. And he brought me home copies of The Lancet. Now, at 8 or 10 years of age, or 18 or 20, The Lancet meant nothing at all to me. But my father insisted that we read something more elevated in his mind than comic books.
Not exactly a comic, The Lancet.
The Lancet is not.
Saga cruises where experience respond when you said, "No, I want to be a journalist"?
No, not with a great deal of enthusiasm, because I'm not too sure that they had any idea of what this concept meant. I don't think my father would have heard the word journalist. And so it was very, very strange. And looking back at it now, I think the strangest bit of it really was that when they said you must do your homework and you were being pushed into education, given that and, what my inclination was, there was not the idea, they didn't seem to recognize that it might inevitably mean you're leaving the region all this preparation that they thought they were giving you for life, and they wanted you to aspire to be something better than they were, it would eventually probably mean that you would leave the islands. And I think that was rather sad, actually, because I don't think my parents ever recognized why I took that route. But part of the reason was that they were leading me along that route, although they didn't realize it at the time.
And your father did at one point buy you a radio so you could listen to the news.
I begged him to buy me a radio, and got one of these things with a huge battery the size of an apartment. And I listened to the World Service. And to be very honest, I was a little more selfish in my view about it. I listened to all these people traveling the world and going to big international conferences and meeting prime ministers and presidents. And I thought, somebody's paying them to do all this and to stay at probably nice hotels and to have this interaction with world leaders. This seems not a bad way to earn a living, really. And it probably was as basic as that in my case. I was always interested in international politics. And the radio and the World Service and so on became part of my education.
And you seem to have developed, even then, as early as that, an extraordinary work ethic. Where did that come from?
My father, my parents. My father was a refinery engineer at Texaco in Trinidad, but he had a market garden. We kept pigs. He did odd jobs for Scottish doctors. And there were 4 of us, and he had to work hard, and he was always working. And I suppose I imbibed that. And I, after a bit, felt that there was no other way of succeeding in what you really wanted to do. Much, much later on, doing interviews around the world, I would work for 15, 16 hours a day, getting it right. I went to Iraq once to interview Saddam Hussein. And for a month before I did it, I went into the Iraqi Cultural Office in Tottenham Court Road every day, every morning for about a month, every single morning. It was pretty useless exercise in a way, in that there was a young diplomat in charge of that office who enjoyed life in the nightclubs around the place. And so when I saw him in the morning, he looked as though he wasn't totally connected to what he was doing. There were 2 radios or televisions blaring out. And he would have a pile of papers on his desk. And he would say to me, I had a response from Baghdad about your request to go there, but I wish I could find it somewhere. And I would be tearing what little hair I have out. And it was quite frustrating. But I did it for a month before it finally bore fruit.
And you got it.
And I got it. And I got it. And I became quite assured of the idea that that was the only way to work. Nothing comes for free. It would be wonderful if life were quite easy and you didn't have to press too much. But you have to work hard. I remember, the company gave me a car to go home after news at 10 when I was working at ITN. And it was 10:30 in London. But on the way home, instead of listening to the radio or something, I would phone up my friends in America and, the contacts there. And I remember once I wanted to interview Colin Powell when he became chief of staff at the Pentagon. And we couldn't get nowhere by making telephone calls. So I said to my editor, I said, why do we, I could go for a night. I'll go in the morning, spend the night, come back the following day, but I'll go and see the people that I should see. And I walked into the Pentagon press office, and this guy said to me, he said, you came all the way from London to see us to get an interview? Come back next week.
And you got it.
And we got it.
I think, when